What is up, MFers? So pumped for the video.
Gotta prove that there's no cheating going on here. Ben Milliken certainly belongs on the Mount Rushmore for bass fishing YouTubers. Or share it with someone whose DMs you just want to slide into. But share this video. His channel, Milliken Fishing, has nearly 500,000 subscribers, who he fondly refers to as MFers. We'll get those life vests zipped and clipped, strap down those rods, and stow away those tackle boxes because we are going fishing. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Bass Anglers Podcast. I'm your host, Keith Nicewonger, and I hope this episode finds you with 5 for 25 that have been thermal scanned, x-rayed, and internally scoped. Gotta prove that there's no cheating going on here. If you're new here, I always try to start the show off by wishing everybody 5 for 25 in their live wells. Of course, then those walleye guys came along, stuffed a bunch of lead weights down the throats of their normal sized walleye, and well, then you know. So now, gotta wish you 5 for 25 that have been thermal scanned, x-rayed, and internally scoped just to make sure everybody's legal. All right. Special thanks to our partners who make this podcast possible. Bass Fishing is the official wardrobe sponsor of the Bass Wranglers podcast. Today I am wearing the Seafoam Margarita SPF 30 hooded sun shirt. Be sure to check out all the colors and styles by going to bassgofishing.com. By now, you know we are the Western representatives for Ducket Fishing, pro-driven rods, reels, and baits. You know these guys, the strongest pro staff in all professional bass fishing. It is these same pros that put their ingenuity, experience, and time on the water into all the products that Ducket provides. Ducket's building a Western presence, and if you haven't seen it yet, you soon will. New independent dealerships are popping up all over the place all the time. Find out about the Ducket lineup of pro-driven rods, reels, and baits by going to their website, ducketfishing.com. Ben Milliken certainly belongs on the Mount Rushmore for bass fishing YouTubers. There are very few YouTubers out there that can lay claim to the things that Ben Milliken has done in the wild world of YouTube. Now he's about to throw his hat into the ring of professional tournament fishing. We've got Ben on our show this afternoon, but first, if you like the content that we produce on this channel, hit the subscribe button. Like this video. They tell me it's supposed to do something important for the channel. I haven't figured out what it is yet, but hit the subscribe button, like this video. Share it with a friend. Share it with an enemy. Or share it with someone whose DMs you just want to slide into. But share this video. As always, leave a comment. We would love to know what our subscribers think of our content, and we would love to hear you tell us more about what you'd like to see on this channel. Go ahead, hit the subscribe button. I'll play some guitar for you while you're doing that. Go on, subscribe now. Thank you. We are building our viewership, and your follow means a lot to us. Okay, let's get this show on the road. Our guest today is America's favorite bass fishing YouTuber. His channel, Milliken Fishing, has nearly 500,000 subscribers, who he fondly refers to as MFers. He is lining up to take a swing at the BASS Qualifiers in 2023. Ben Milliken, welcome to the Bass Wranglers podcast. Thanks for being with us.
Hey, how's it going, man? Thanks a ton for having me on.
I'm relatively new to YouTube, but as near as I can tell, we've got John B., we've got Greg Blanchard, the Googans, and we've got Ben Milliken. How's that for a Mount Rushmore for YouTube bass fishermen?
That's pretty cool. It's cool to be a part of it, Keith.
How did you get started in this whole thing?
With YouTube and social media and all that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I fished my whole life, and I had a passion and wanted to be a professional fisherman in some capacity. But I got done with college and had a family and got my degree and decided to get a real job. And so what I realized quickly was my dream of becoming a professional tournament fisherman would not be too easy because with a real job, as many of you guys know, you don't get to take off 9, 10, 11, 15 weeks of work every year. So I pretty much just had to go to work and fish tournaments and stuff on the weekends. But I saw some guys doing the YouTube thing online on YouTube. And so I decided I was going to hop in and do that. My wife got me a GoPro camera for my birthday, and I used it a few times and posted some stuff randomly on YouTube. And I didn't look at it actually for like 6 months. The videos I posted, I just kind of did it for fun. But I looked back and they had some views, and I was like, okay, this is interesting. And so, uh, yeah, I was like, all right, I'm gonna give this a go. And I started to realize some people were making a living doing it, and so I started posting more and more content. This was like 7 years ago, and I got to the point where I was starting to make a little bit of money off it, and started to realize if I went full time in it, that I thought that I could really do well with it. And so my wife gave me the go ahead, and she was behind me and supported me, and haven't looked back ever since. The last six years or so, I've been doing it full time.
I mean, so no background in media of any kind, or I mean, that's not what
No,
your degree was in.
no, sir, no. I had an environmental biology degree, so yep, totally different. I had a lot of experience in marketing from my past experiences getting sponsors for fishing, tournament wise, but no, nothing in media.
I there are so many videos that you've watched that I've enjoyed watching. I thought I would talk about some of the ones I've recently seen you post. You did a really what I thought was a well done video about live scope recently. I'm completely fascinated by the concept of it. Talk a little bit about how you use live electronics.
Yeah, I appreciate the kind words on the videos, and we've been trying to incorporate a lot of the live footage on the screen of what I'm actually looking
It,
like. I think
it is really cool. It is really
yeah,
cool.
it's been fun. I mean, it's changed the way I fish big time. Been using it for almost 4 years now. I think three plus years at least, and I mean, I can't say anything more than it's flat out changed the way that I approach new fisheries. It's even changed the way that I look for new places, new bodies of water to fish and film content at. I'm looking for deeper, cleaner body of waters all the time. It seems like, because that kind of lends itself a little bit more to fish being more visual feeders and having a propensity to track down bait in the open basin, and deeper water over deeper structure and cover. And so that's kind of the type of areas and lakes that I look for a lot of times. But man, I could give a 6 hour seminar on how it's changed the way I fish. But it it's changed the tackle that I use. It's changed the baits that I use. And truthfully, and I try to really portray this on my channel, my videos. It's allowed me to learn quicker and more efficiently than anything I've ever done with my fishing. Um, a lot of people that are jumping in the game now are seeing forward facing sonar as a way to just a way to fish, and luckily I was able to fish for 30 years before live sonar came out, and really get my background and my fundamentals down and everything. But now that I established that, and I can put that in conjunction with forward facing sonar and a variety of different baits, it's deadly and super efficient for sure.
You mentioned a really interesting point to me. I hear about the anti live scopers out there, and one of the big complaints is, oh, that young bass anglers aren't going to learn. And I get the fundamental aspect of it, but I feel like the people that I interview on this show are so much further ahead than we were, when I was a youngster. And I think that you learn an awful lot more about fish movement from using live scope, because they're here one day, you got to find them the next day, right?
Yeah, of course. Um, yeah, well, and it's definitely it's very complex, obviously, and the younger generation does have an advantage in being more technologically savvy, I would say. But at the same time, I feel like it's so important to establish your fundamentals in fishing, or you're never going to have a chance to even present a bait properly or position the boat properly. You can't just hop on a boat with live scope
Right.
without any background in even like serious bass fishing, and really have a chance. Because I mean, I've got buddies that I've met in the fishing industry and through the social media stuff that aren't necessarily good anglers, and you give them live scope on the boat and they have no chance of catching a fish with it, or even seeing the right fish, or knowing what they're looking at. So there's definitely a lot more to it than just plugging it in and starting to catch fish better than people that don't have it.
Well, it is a new tool. It's the latest tool. There was a time when our boats didn't have trolling motors, and then we got trolling motors, And there was a time when our boats were made out of aluminum, and then the fiberglass boats came along, and then the bigger horsepower motors and things like this. I wanted to ask you, why is live scope such a controversial subject?
That's a really great question. I think it's because we have a tendency as humanity and society to repeat ourselves and not learn from our past judgments on things. You know, just like people thought paper graphs were cheating
Right,
once people had that, and people
right.
thought 2D sonar was cheating. People thought side imaging was cheating. They thought GPS was cheating,
GPS, yeah.
and they're just tools to help us learn more, and fish get conditioned to everything. So really live scope, I mean, it's just another tool. I mean, I think that they see or hear about people just going out and, oh, they could see a fish and they cast it to it and they were able to see exactly where it was and how to catch it, and then they caught it, so that's cheating. But in reality, I mean, nature always finds a way. These bass are always learning and they're always getting conditioned to pressure. And I know that the question all the anti live scopers are always asking is, well, where do you draw the line? What comes next? Well, what comes next is going to be something a little bit better. And it's just going to be another tool, but the fish are just going to keep evolving. And so we have to keep evolving as well as anglers.
Have you noticed? Uh, Fish when they get pinged by a live scope? Have you noticed fish responding to that?
So bass, I've never seen a bass as many hundreds of thousands of bass that I've watched on live scope. I've never seen one where I beamed to it and it got spooked or stopped in its tracks or anything like that. That's not something that happens. But what I do notice is in lakes where they get live scoped a lot, they get conditioned to baits falling on top of them
Oh,
and
yeah.
getting spooked that way.
Okay.
Because I mean, I got to luckily one place, OHIV, if you're familiar with the lake.
Hmm.
It's super clean, and they'll pretty much everyone just live scopes there. It's what we started there. They watch the video. Now everyone goes out there and does catch big fish. Well, those fish had never had pressure their entire lifespan or several generations of their lifespans, and so they had never had pressure. Well, that's a great example of a lake now where they're strictly getting used to people throwing on top of their heads in wide open spaces. Because, you know, before live scope, you'd have to get lucky. You have a 1% chance maybe of casting on top of a fish in the middle of the lake, 20 however feet deep water.
Yeah.
Now that there's live scope, they're hearing Alabama rigs and everything else splash on top of their heads, even if it's 20 feet above them, and that makes them a lot more weary. And so places like that, um, you have to dial your cast in and figure out how far away you need to cast your bait past them, or a lighter splash, or a more natural presentation, stuff like that. But yeah, I'd say it's fish are getting conditions in lakes where they get live scoped a lot simply from baits hitting on top of their head or near on top of their head. That's what I've noticed.
That's an interesting comment. I've heard some guys tell me that they think that it's comparable to like trolling motor noise and stuff like that. That it might affect the fish. But you know, I think what you say makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Fish
I've
see a
now
lot of
I've
baits and they're going to react.
I've pinged other species of fish and spooked them for sure. I know that crappie do get spooked. I've seen schools of big gizzard shad definitely get spooked. They feel it. I've seen gar that can feel it and get spooked, but never a bass.
So, in summary, live scope fishing is not cheating, or it is cheating.
I mean, fishing's whatever anyone wants to make it. I mean, some people want to sit on a bucket with a can of worms and catch them. Other people want to have 15 graphs on their boat and spend $200,000 on their boat. It is what it is. People can say it's cheating, and people can say that paper graph or 2D sonar is cheating if they want to as well. But I'm just using the best technology that's available to me.
Right, and I've heard you say that in your videos a few times, referring to cheating. But you're embracing the technology. You're not that guy that says "get off my lawn" to the kids and that stuff like that.
Of course not. Of course not. And I'm gonna try, especially as I continue. I'm gonna try not to get set in my ways, because there will be something coming that's gonna be better than live scope and better than our version of live scope. So you always got to keep your eyes open.
Yep. Wardrobe for the Bass True Anglers podcast is brought to you by Basco Fishing. High-performance fishing apparel that can be customized to fit your needs. Do you need to showcase your brand? Does your business need apparel? Do you need a tournament jersey? Visit their website at www.bascofishing.com. So you recently released a video of a 50-pound limit you caught. It feels to me like you are evolving more as a big bass fisherman, kind of in a maybe a Chris Zaldane mode. I don't know. Have you always been a big bass chaser, or is this something that has kind of evolved in your fishing?
So we moved down to Texas about a year and a half ago, a little over a
That'll
year
do
and
it.
a half ago. And so I lived in the yeah, exactly. I lived in Nebraska my whole life before that, where I mean our state record is 10 pounds, but there's about two fish over 7 pounds in the entire state. Like it's there the biggest fish in most of the lakes are 5.5 to 7 pounds. And so back then, where I fished a lot more tournaments, and but the season was a lot shorter then too for fishing with ice fishing and everything. I was catching the biggest fish in the lake, but it didn't look like it because they were 5.5 6 pounders. But yeah, now that I'm down in Texas, it's hard to not go chase those fish, especially with these that are most of these lakes have giant gizzard shad in them. These are big Florida strain bass with big heads. They eat giant baits, and it's really hard for me to want to go sit by a spillway and make a video to try to get some views when I can go try to catch a 12, 15-pound bass on a giant swim bait. I just love it too much.
So, in your mind, other than the size, what is the difference between a 12-pound bass and a 3-pound bass? Mannerisms, feeding habits, all those kinds of things. What do you think sets a bass apart or allows a bass to get that big?
It's definitely. I honestly probably have different feelings about it now that I fish for them every day. Like I've probably seen a bass over 10 pounds every day bass fishing on live scope almost the entire year this year. But and so I think my feelings about that have probably changed now than they were maybe a couple years ago. I used to think that a giant bass like that would live more of a solitary individual lifestyle and maybe even roam around in the main basin of a lake instead of setting up in schools. But what I've kind of realized is those big bass will actually all school up together a lot of times of the year too. So it's kind of weird. I'll see schools of 8 to 12, 13-pound fish, group like 10 of them sometimes, and that's definitely not something that I thought that they would do. But they really use their schooling advantage over their bait fish, and they destroy them. But I guess the biggest difference to me, obviously, it's a fish with an eyeball that's 4 times the size of a 3-pound bass. And so I think they almost feed more like smallmouth do once they get that size. They're a lot more visual with the way that they feed. And I mean, that really lends itself well to people that fish with live scope because once they become more visual, they're no longer going to sit in grass. They're not going to sit next to a stump in 2 feet of water because that doesn't give them the best opportunity to see what prey is coming from a distance. And so it seems like they're more willing to be in open water or deeper water or on a deeper piece of structure somewhere that they can ambush something, and they want to be in the cleanest water a lot of times too, down closer to the dams because they have their advantage of being able to see over a smaller fish. So I think as a fish gets bigger, it gets smarter and it gets more weary. It's constantly conditioned. A lot of guys that fish in California, I know, think that they only feed at night now because a lot of those lakes are closed at night. And so generations of bass have evolved to only feed at night now. I've heard that from several anglers. And then, of course, they're more susceptible to big baits too, I think. You're always going to have guys that catch a 10-pounder on a jig or a Carolina rigged French fry or something like that. But I think you have a substantially better chance of catching a double digit bass with 8-inch plus swim bait. 100%.
Now, I had a chance to talk to Butch Brown. He's a legendary big fish guy from California, where I am
Mm-hmm.
here. And we were talking about forage. In California, we used to have trout plants, and there's no doubt that the bass ate the trout, but there are not enough trout. There are not enough trout planted in these lakes for every bass in the lake to be able to eat a trout. And so the subject moves to other types of forage. What kind of forage are you looking at when you're when you're trying to catch these big fish? You mentioned gizzard
Um,
shads.
yeah, yeah. Big gizzard shad are super vital. I mean, if you have big gizzard shad in a lake, there's going to be big bass, and there's going to
Yeah.
be big bass that eat big baits generally. So that really is a common denominator, especially if you're trying to catch one on a big bait. But of course, they eat everything. There's another lake that I fish that there's a ton of thread fins. There's no gizzards that I've seen, and the thread fins, of course, in the winter, they'll ball up giant schools in the main basin, and the bass will chase them around. And I caught one that was almost 13 pounds last year on a 2.7-inch swim bait on a spinning rod. So, in those types of fisheries, just as easily, they'll move out and chase those thread fin around. But I think, hands down, in the entire state of Texas, that big gizzard shad is the forage for the common denominator for finding big bass.
Yeah. Now, when I talked to Butch Brown, he says that carp are another forage that nobody really looks at. And he asked me a great question. He said, "Keith, have you ever seen a baby carp or a small carp in the lake?" And I began thinking about all the carp I ever see when I'm fishing, and they're all big.
Hmm.
So
Yeah,
you
for
got to
sure.
figure those fish are getting eaten too.
Yeah, that or they're growing super quick because they eat
That could be.
slime and crap on the bottom. But yeah, they're definitely a forage base for sure. I know they are out there. They were a lot more in Nebraska as well as shiners too.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
bass, definitely the species definitely prefers something without spines and scales, as much as possible, with a lot of oil in it. And the rainbow trout, gizzard shad, the little carp, they're perfect. Of course,
Yeah.
bass, they love crappie, they love bluegill, they love crayfish. But he's exactly right. That fatty, slimy, oily, smooth, longer profile is definitely the deal.
One more question on the subject of big fish. Do you like a falling barometer? Do you like a rising moon? Do you like a falling moon? Or does it even matter to you?
Well, I definitely, we spend a lot of time. We don't usually go out and fish for 4 hours or 5 hours in a day. We fish almost the entire sun
Mhm.
up period, and there is definitely feeding windows and feeding periods in there. And a lot of it does line up with moonrise, moonset sometimes, but a lot of it doesn't. And it doesn't always make sense. And these Texas fish are super random with when they want to pull the trigger. And so my biggest thing is, don't I would never look at that before I went out fishing, because I've had days when they should have been chewing and they do not. I've had days when they shouldn't have been biting and they still don't. And then I've had days when they shouldn't have been biting and I go to a new lake I've never been to before and it's an incredible day.
Yeah.
You just got to get out and fish. Don't I would strongly suggest to anyone listening to this, don't ever look at the weather, look at anything, any type of outside source or influence, and let that dictate your fishing. Now, if you get to the lake and it's slick, calm, and sunny, and a front went through, that's when you might want to downsize. Obviously, a post frontal day, you might want to throw something with a lot less action. But yeah, I honestly, I don't have a favorite time or period or anything.
Time to go fishing. It's time to go fishing.
That's exactly right.
Change. It's inevitable. To improve, you must adapt. The sport is evolving. A paradigm shift is a fundamental change of basic concepts. Don't get left behind. Introducing Paradigm. Paradigm Reels by Duckett Fishing. Pro-driven.
Recently, you announced that you'll be fishing the BASS Qualifiers in 2023, attempting to go all in to make the BASS Elite Series. Talk about the thought process there. You kind of already have, in that you always wanted to do this, but I guess I was a little surprised to hear that you were going to do this.
Yeah, I always have wanted to do it. And I've always kind of felt like, I don't know, I could have I was in position to do it the last several years, just with it being my job and everything, fishing full time, and it's been going well, so that wasn't an issue. But I wanted to sharpen up there was just a lot of things. I wanted to sharpen up a lot of different weaknesses I felt like I had as an angler to get more well-rounded. And then we got moved down here to Texas. We're settled in a little bit now, and we're a little bit closer than we were in Nebraska to a lot of these fisheries. They changed the rules. That was a huge thing. The rule change. Several of the rule changes were huge for me. Now that you have to fish all nine, I think that takes a lot of local advantage out of it. You have to be a lot more well-rounded, which I fish all over the country, so I think that gives me an advantage, more of an advantage than it would have if it was just the three tournament division format like it was before. And they changed the practice rule, which was always a big turnoff to me, where you'd go to a tough fishery and guys had been there for 30 days straight, beating up a lake that already wasn't a good fishery. And by the time the tournament comes around, it's just like a crapshoot. And so I kind of always felt like that wasn't a very good, I don't know, it didn't really dictate maybe the best angler always winning or having the best chance of really going and proving yourself. So basically, like all those things happening at once has me super interested. And then I think the schedule is awesome too. It's a very diverse schedule of fisheries around the country, and that really attracted me to it too.
We've seen a ton of professional bass anglers become YouTubers, but there have been very few YouTubers that have become professional bass fishermen. Matty Wong comes to mind, but what kind of expectations do you have? I mean, is it Elite Series or bust, or is this a learning process continued? What's your mindset?
Yeah, that's tough for me to answer. I think we don't even know that's what's going to happen until the first couple tournaments get done with what the expectations should be. I mean, obviously, if the first couple go well, we're going to definitely be playing more of a points style the rest of the year to try to qualify. If the first couple don't go so well, or the first 4 or 5 even, then I'm going to try to win one to try to make the classic, obviously. But I don't know what to expect other than this is going to be, I think a lot of the people that are covering the opens closely and people that are fishing the opens, I think people think this is going to be the most difficult, well-rounded, toughest competition that's ever been in the Bassmaster Opens, and it might be the toughest league and toughest series to do well in out of everything, even the top level tournaments, with as many good anglers that are fishing it right now, and as big of a field and as well-rounded of a field as it is. So I just know that it's going to be a total grind. I don't expect to do great. I don't expect to win them, but I'm going to do the absolute best I can, and we'll see where that gets me.
We can expect to see a lot of Milliken videos coming from these Bass Opens, I take it.
Yeah, definitely. That's a huge part of it. I definitely want to give more tournament videos, and my family is going to be traveling with me, so I'm super excited to have them coming along too. Um, yeah, we're going to put as much content out as possible. I know it's not always going to be easy when I don't have a good day to put the camera in my face when I get off the water, but I'm going to have to paint a smile on and realize that I wouldn't be able to do it without the viewers that have made it possible over the years. And so I'm going to try to give the best look at it possible.
Well, that's really the most compelling stuff is when they take the good days with the bad days.
Of course.
I know about Sixth Sense fishing because of Ben Milliken. How does Sixth Sense feel about Ben Milliken Tournament Pro?
Oh, they're excited about anything that I do. Of course, they want to make sure that I keep posting videos and everything and catching fish on the baits. But at the same time, man, I've developed a couple new baits the last few years with Sixth Sense, and the business is doing great. And they want me to do whatever I want to do, and they're going to support me and back me along the way. So it's just going to be another great platform for me to get some baits in front of some new eyes, and hopefully do well in some of these tournaments on the baits too.
I think it's just, it just, to me, it adds a whole nother level to something that already has so many levels. The YouTube fishing is great, but now you're adding this aspect of professional tour fishing. I'm really excited about it. I mean, I don't mean to sound like a fanboy here, but it's the kind of stuff that fans want to see.
Of course, I appreciate that a lot, and it is really cool to think about. Like I've been posting tournament videos on my channel since the start. Before I did any of this, I was a tournament fisherman, and I've had people comment on every single video tournament or just bass fishing video that I've posted for years saying, you should try to fish the opens. I would love to see you fish the opens. I'd love to see you try to fish professionally in tournaments. And so to actually be able to be doing that, I think it's going to be really cool for people to follow. And I'm really grateful for the people that have supported me. And this is going to be a cool way to give them a different look at it.
Well, Ben, I appreciate your time tonight. These videos that I do are usually in the 30 to 40-minute range, and we're just about right there. I appreciate you taking some time. I know it's late back there. Best of luck to you. We'll keep in touch and let's see where this goes.
All right. I appreciate it, man. Thanks a ton for having me on. You do a great job on here, and hopefully I'll be coming back on sometime again with some, hopefully some good tournament finishes to talk about.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Take care.
Thank you.
All right. Ben Milliken has done it his way. He's already built a fan base, a strong brand in the fishing industry, and the credibility amongst his subscribers. Now he's hitting the tournament trail, and I, for one, can't wait to see how this turns out. One thing is for sure, it's going to be interesting, it's going to be entertaining, and it might be a little controversial. I can't wait. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of the Bass Wranglers Podcast. Thanks for being with us once again. Until next time, keep those live vests zipped and clipped. Keep both hands on the wheel, and we will talk to you again very soon.